The Velthari Dominion had conquered 4,000 worlds across 3 galaxies. Their warships were so large that they blocked out the light of stars. Their armies counted in the trillions. For 10,000 years, they had spread across the universe like a dark wave, swallowing everything in their path. No species had ever stopped them. No species had even come close. High Arbiter Kethzan stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Silence. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that glowed a soft purple. He had led the conquest of over 200 worlds himself. He had seen species beg for mercy. He had seen them fight and lose. He had seen them run and be caught. In all his long life, he had never seen anything truly surprising. Until now, he was looking at data about a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Earth, his science officer said. The natives call it Earth. Kethzan studied the images on the screen. Blue oceans, green and brown land, white clouds. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. Tell me about the species, he said. The science officer pulled up more data. They call themselves humans. They are soft-bodied mammals. They live for less than 100 years. They have not developed faster than light travel. They still use chemical rockets to reach their own moon. The officer paused. They are also divided into many separate nations that fight each other regularly. Kethzan made a sound that was almost a laugh. They fight among themselves? They have not even united their own planet? No, High Arbiter. They have wars over territory, resources, and ideas. They have been killing each other for their entire history. This was almost too easy. A species that could not stop fighting itself would certainly not be able to fight the Dominion. Kethzan had seen this pattern before. Divided species always fell quickly. They would betray each other. They would try to make deals. They would crumble. Classification? He asked. Grade 7 Primitive World. Recommended action. Subjugation protocol. Kethzan nodded. The humans would become slaves. They would work in mines and factories across the Dominion. Those who refused would be processed for biological resources. Their organs could be harvested. Their proteins could be recycled. Nothing would be wasted. Send 12 dreadnoughts, Kethzan ordered. That should be more than enough. The ships departed within the hour. 3 days later, the Dominion fleet arrived in Earth's solar system. The 12 dreadnoughts were each 5 kilometers long. Their hulls were black and covered with weapons. Their shields could stop nuclear explosions. Their crews had conquered dozens of worlds each. They positioned themselves in orbit around Earth and began their broadcast. The message was translated into every human language and sent through every communication system on the planet. Televisions showed it. Radios played it. Phones displayed the text. No human could escape the words. People of Earth, you have been chosen by the Velthari Dominion. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender all weapons. You will present your leaders for processing. You will accept your new role as servants of the Dominion. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply. If you do not surrender, we will destroy your cities one by one until you do. Resistance is not possible. Your technology cannot harm us. Your militaries cannot stop us. Accept your fate with dignity, or accept it with suffering. The choice is yours. The outcome is the same. The message ended. The Dominion fleet waited. On Earth, 7 billion humans heard the words. For a moment, the entire planet was silent. People stood in the streets and looked up at the sky. They could not see the ships yet, but they knew they were there. Families held each other. Children cried. Leaders gathered in emergency meetings. And then something happened that the Dominion had never seen before. The nations of Earth stopped fighting each other. Not slowly. Not with negotiations and treaties. They just stopped. Within hours, enemies became allies. Countries that had pointed nuclear weapons at each other for decades suddenly shared military codes and defense plans. Old hatreds were set aside. Old grudges were forgotten. Russia called the United States. China called Japan. India called Pakistan. The message was the same everywhere. We will deal with our problems later. Right now we have a bigger enemy. The United Nations held an emergency session. It lasted only 30 minutes. Every nation voted the same way. Every leader agreed. They would not surrender. They would not kneel. They would fight. General Amara Okonkwo of Nigeria was chosen to lead the new United Earth Defense Coalition. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes. She had fought in 3 wars. She had seen death many times. She was not afraid of it. She stood before the cameras and spoke to both humanity and the aliens watching from above. "We have received your message," she said. "We understand your demands. And we have a response." She paused. The whole world was watching. The Dominion was listening. "No." That was all she said. One word. Then she turned and walked away to prepare for war. High Arbiter Kethzan received the report with confusion. He had never heard that word from a conquered species before. He had never seen a divided world unite so quickly. He had never encountered a people who chose to fight when fighting was clearly hopeless. He dismissed his confusion. It did not matter. The humans were brave, perhaps, but bravery would not stop Dominion weapons. They would learn. They would break. They always did. He gave the order for the ground assault to begin. He did not know that he had just made the worst mistake in the history of his species. The Dominion assault began at dawn across 3 continents. Dropships fell from the sky like black rain. Each ship carried 500 soldiers, and there were thousands of ships. The Dominion troops were tall and strong, covered in armor that could stop bullets. They carried energy weapons that could melt steel. They had conquered hundreds of worlds using these same tactics. They expected the humans to run. They expected panic in the streets, screaming civilians, and soldiers who would throw down their weapons when they saw the power of the Dominion. They did not expect what actually happened. In New York, the first wave of Dominion soldiers landed in Central Park. They formed their lines and began marching toward the city center. They made it 3 blocks before the first explosion. A building collapsed on top of them, brought down by charges planted hours earlier. Human soldiers appeared from subway tunnels and basement windows. They fired everything they had. Bullets, rockets, grenades. Most of the weapons did little damage to Dominion armor, but some did. And the humans learned from every shot. Their neck joints are weak. A sergeant shouted into his radio. "Aim for the neck joints." Within minutes, every human soldier in the city knew where to aim. They shared information faster than the Dominion could adapt. Every weakness discovered was broadcast to every fighter. Every failed tactic was abandoned. Every successful attack was copied. In Beijing, the Dominion faced the same strange resistance. The human soldiers did not fight like a normal military. They fought like animals protecting their homes. They used the city itself as a weapon. Streets became traps. Buildings became fortresses. Sewers became tunnels for ambush and escape. A Dominion commander reported back to the fleet with confusion in his voice. "They are not retreating. They know they cannot win. But they are not retreating. They are dying in place and making us pay for every meter of ground." In Mumbai, something even stranger happened. The civilian population did not flee. Instead, thousands of ordinary people joined the fight. They brought kitchen knives and farming tools. They threw rocks and bottles filled with fire. They knew they would die. They attacked anyway. An old woman, nearly 80 years old, walked up to a Dominion soldier and detonated explosives strapped to her chest. She killed herself and 2 enemy troops. Her last words, recorded by a nearby camera, were, "This is my home. You cannot have it." The Dominion had never seen anything like this. On other worlds, civilian populations surrendered quickly. They wanted to live. They were willing to serve if it meant survival. But these humans seemed to value something more than their own lives. They valued freedom. They valued their planet. They valued the idea that no one could take what was theirs. High Arbiter Kethzan received the battle reports with growing frustration. His forces were winning, of course. The humans could not stop them. But the losses were higher than expected, much higher, and the humans were learning too fast. They adapt in hours what takes other species years to understand, his tactical officer reported. They share information across their entire planet instantly. When one human learns something, they all learn it. "They are still primitives," Kethzan said. "They cannot harm our ships. They cannot stop our advance. Continue the assault." But he was troubled. There was something wrong with these creatures, something that did not match any species he had encountered before. They fought with skill, yes, but they also fought with something else, something that looked almost like joy, not joy in killing. The humans clearly hated the violence. They cried over their dead. They screamed in grief when friends fell, but there was a fire in their eyes when they fought, a terrible happiness in the resistance itself. It was as if some part of them had been waiting their whole lives for this moment, as if they had been built for exactly this kind of desperate, hopeless war. General Okonkwo watched the battle reports from her command center deep underground. The numbers were bad. Humanity was losing soldiers faster than the enemy. The Dominion advance was slow but steady. At this rate, the major cities would fall within weeks. But she was not discouraged. She had known from the beginning that they could not win a ground war. The enemy was too strong, too advanced, too numerous. The ground battle was never meant to be won. It was meant to buy time. Time for the real plan. She picked up her communicator and spoke to the world. Her words were broadcast on every channel, heard by every human still alive to hear them. My fellow humans, we have shown them what we are. We have shown them that we do not surrender. We have shown them that we do not break. Now it is time to show them what happens when they push us too far. We have given them chances to leave. They have refused. So now we will teach them what our ancestors learned long ago. She paused, and her voice became cold. There are worse things than death, and we are prepared to prove it. High Arbiter Kethzan heard the broadcast. He did not understand it. What could primitives do to threaten the Dominion? Their weapons were weak, their ships were slow. They had no allies, no advanced technology, nothing that could touch his fleet in orbit. He decided to send a message of his own, a lesson in the price of defiance. He ordered the orbital bombardment of Sao Paulo, Brazil, a city of 14 million people. He would show the humans what real power looked like. He would break their spirit with fire from the sky. The bombardment lasted 11 minutes. When it was finished, Sao Paulo was gone. 14 million humans were dead. The crater that remained was visible from space. Kethzan expected surrender after that. He expected the humans to finally understand their position. He expected fear. What he got instead was a transmission that would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. The world watched Sao Paulo burn. 14 million voices went silent in 11 minutes. Families were erased. Children were turned to ash. An entire city became a grave. For 1 hour, humanity was quiet. People wept in the streets. Soldiers stopped fighting and stared at the sky. The weight of what had happened pressed down on every heart. And then the silence ended. It ended not with screaming or crying, but with something far more dangerous. It ended with cold, focused rage. General Okonkwo stood in the transmission center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her face showed no tears. Her hands did not shake. She had known this might happen. She had prepared for it. Now it was time to show the Dominion what humanity really was. Send it, she said. Send everything. Every satellite dish on Earth turned toward the Dominion fleet. Every radio tower, every broadcast station, every communications array joined together. They sent a single transmission, focused like a beam of light at the alien ships. The transmission had 3 parts. The first part was data, numbers, locations, the complete record of every nuclear weapon on Earth. Not just the missiles pointed at the Dominion ships, but all of them. The ones hidden in mountains, the ones sleeping in submarines under the ocean, the ones buried in secret bases that no government had ever admitted existed. The total was larger than the Dominion had calculated. Much larger. The second part was video, old footage from human history. The transmission showed a city called Hiroshima, and then a flash of light, and then nothing but destruction. It showed another city called Nagasaki, and the same thing happened. Then it showed test after test. Explosions in deserts, explosions on islands, explosions underground, hundreds of nuclear weapons detonated by humans on their own planet, just to see what would happen. The videos showed something the Dominion had never imagined. The humans had built weapons powerful enough to destroy their own world, and they had built them 70 years ago. They had been carrying the power of extinction in their pockets for generations, waiting, always waiting, for a reason to use it. The third part was a voice. It spoke in perfect Velthari, the language of the Dominion. The words were clear and cold. This is your final warning. You believe you are conquerors. You have taken 4,000 worlds. You have never lost. You think you understand war. The voice paused. You understand nothing. You have never met a species like us. We do not calculate odds of survival. We do not surrender when the situation is hopeless. We do not value our lives more than our freedom. Another pause. Look at the data we have sent. Look at our history. We have spent 70 years with enough weapons to end all life on our planet. We kept them pointed at each other. We lived every day knowing that any moment could be our last. We did not do this because we are wise. We did it because we are what you cannot understand. We are a species that would rather die completely than live on our knees. The voice became even colder. You killed 14 million of us today. You think this will break us? You are wrong. It has only made us certain. We know now that you will not stop. We know now that you will not show mercy. So we will show you what we truly are. The final words came slowly, each one heavy with meaning. Withdraw from our solar system now. Do not return. If you do not leave within 72 hours, we will destroy ourselves and take you with us. Your ships will burn in nuclear fire. Your soldiers will die on poisoned ground. And we will laugh as we fall, because we will fall free. This is your final warning. Total destruction awaits. For all of us. The transmission ended. High Arbiter Kethzan sat in silence for a long time. His officers watched him, waiting for orders. None came. Finally, his senior advisor spoke. High Arbiter, this must be a bluff. No rational species would choose extinction over submission. They are trying to frighten us. Perhaps, Kethzan said. But his voice was uncertain. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields, the tactical officer added. Even if they launch everything they have, our ships will survive. Their threat is empty. Their threat to us, perhaps. Another officer said quietly. But not their threat to themselves. Look at their history. They really did build those weapons. They really did test them on their own soil. They have been preparing for the end of their world for 70 years. This is not normal behavior for a species. This is insanity. They are primitives, Kethzan said. But he did not sound convinced. Primitives who united their entire planet in hours, the advisor replied. Primitives who are fighting to the death in every city. Primitives who sent old women with explosives against our soldiers. He paused. High Arbiter, I have studied many species. I have never seen anything like this. They do not think like us. They do not value what we value. I believe they will do exactly what they threaten to do. Kethzan stood and walked to the window. Below him, Earth turned slowly in space. It looked so peaceful from up here. So small, so fragile, and yet it had produced something terrible. A species that treated extinction as an acceptable outcome. A species that would burn everything rather than submit. Continue the bombardment, Kethzan said finally. They will not destroy themselves. No species is that insane. He was wrong. He would learn just how wrong in the hours to come. The Dominion fleet prepared for the second bombardment. This time, the target was London. 8 million people lived there. Kethzan believed that another demonstration of power would break human resistance. He believed that they would see the fire falling from the sky and finally understand that hope was gone. He believed wrong. 12 hours before the bombardment was scheduled to begin, something happened that no one in the Dominion had ever imagined possible. 17 different nations launched at the same moment. The missiles did not fly toward the Dominion ships in orbit. They flew outward, into deep space, on courses that made no sense to the alien observers. The Dominion tracked them with confusion. Where were these weapons going? There was nothing out there. Nothing but empty space and distant stars. They were wrong about that too. General Okonkwo watched the launches from her command center. Her face was calm, but her heart was beating fast. This was the secret that humanity had kept for 70 years. The plan that no government had ever spoken about publicly. The preparation that had begun in 1952, when the first reports of unidentified objects in Earth's skies had reached military leaders. They had never been certain that aliens existed, but they had prepared anyway, because that is what humans do. They plan for the worst. They imagine disasters and build defenses against them. They cannot help themselves. The program had many names over the decades. Different countries had different projects, but they all shared the same goal. If aliens ever came to Earth with hostile intentions, humanity would be ready to strike back. Not just at the invaders in orbit, but at their homes, at their bases, at everything they valued. Sleeper ships had been launched in secret over the past 20 years. Slow ships, traveling without faster-than-light drives, carrying nuclear weapons and guidance systems. They had been aimed at locations identified by radio telescopes and mathematical models. best guesses about where alien civilizations might have bases or colonies. Most of the ships had found nothing, but some had found exactly what they were looking for. 3 Dominion forward bases in neighboring star systems vanished in nuclear fire. The explosions were enormous. The bases had been hidden, secret installations that the Dominion believed no primitive species could ever locate. They were wrong. Kithzan received the reports with growing horror. How was this possible? How could humans have reached those bases? How could they have known where to look? More reports came in. A Dominion colony world, home to 12 million Velthari citizens, had received a transmission. The message was in perfect Velthari. You have 6 hours to evacuate. After that, this world will burn. This is not a negotiation. This is a countdown. The colony began evacuation immediately. Ships fled the planet in panic. 6 hours later, the nuclear weapons detonated. The planet was not destroyed, but its surface was ruined. Cities became craters. Oceans boiled. The message was clear. Humanity could have killed millions. They chose not to. This time, Kithzan called an emergency meeting of his war council. How? He demanded. How are they doing this? His intelligence officer answered with fear in his voice. They have been planning for this scenario for decades, High Arbiter. They have ships we never detected, weapons we never counted, and their artificial intelligence networks. He paused. They have been listening to our communications since we arrived. They have broken our encryption. They know everything we have said, every order, every secret. That is impossible, Kithzan said. It should be impossible, the officer agreed. But they did it anyway. They are not like other species. They do not wait to be threatened. They threaten first. They do not react to danger. They prepare for it before it arrives. The worst news came last. A single ship had been detected on a course toward the Dominion homeworld. It was traveling at sublight speed, slow by galactic standards. It had been launched 20 years ago, long before the Dominion had ever heard of Earth. It was 8 months away from Velthari Prime. The ship carried no crew, only computers, engines, and enough nuclear weapons to turn the surface of a planet to glass. A message from the ship arrived at the same moment the intelligence officer finished speaking. It was addressed directly to High Arbiter Kithzan. We told you to leave. You did not listen. You killed our people. You burned our city. So now we will show you what we have been saving for exactly this moment. The message continued. The ship approaching your homeworld cannot be stopped. It is too far away for you to reach in time. It will arrive in 8 months. When it arrives, it will detonate. Your world will die. A pause. Unless you leave now. Unless you withdraw from our solar system and never return. If you do this, we will recall the ship. We will let your world live. But if you stay, if you bomb one more city, if you kill one more human, then nothing will stop what comes next. The message ended with a single sentence that burned itself into Kithzan's memory. You have made us into the monsters you feared. Now live with the consequences. Kithzan stood frozen. His officers were silent. The impossible had happened. A primitive species, a grade 7 world, had put a weapon against the throat of the Dominion itself. And he believed, finally, that they would use it. Because everything he had learned about humans told him one thing. They did not bluff. They did not threaten what they were not willing to do. They had proven this with 70 years of nuclear standoffs with themselves. They had proven it with suicide bombers and soldiers who died rather than retreated. They would destroy his homeworld. They would do it happily. They would count it as victory, even if it cost them everything. For the first time in his life, High Arbiter Kithzan felt fear, real fear, the kind that tells you that you have made a terrible mistake. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a meeting in space. High Arbiter Kithzan requested peace talks 12 hours after learning about the ghost ship. His officers had argued. Some wanted to fight on. Some believed humanity was still bluffing. But Kithzan had looked into the data, studied the history, and understood something his officers did not. The humans were not insane. They were simply operating by different rules. Rules that said some things were worth dying for. Rules that said freedom was more valuable than survival. Rules that the Dominion had never encountered in 10,000 years of conquest. General Okonkwo agreed to meet. She traveled to a station orbiting Ceres, the largest asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. It was neutral ground. Neither side had forces there. Neither side had an advantage. Keth Zahn arrived expecting to negotiate. He had terms prepared. He would offer to reduce the occupation force. He would allow humans some autonomy. He would give them a place in the Dominion as valued servants rather than slaves. Okonkwo listened to his offers. Then she laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was cold and tired. "You do not understand," she said. "We are not negotiating. We are telling you what happens next." She laid out humanity's demands. Total withdrawal from the Sol system. A 1,000 light-year exclusion zone around Earth. No Dominion ships, probes, or communications within that zone. Ever. And one more thing, she added. You will tell everyone what happened here. Every species in your database. Every civilization you have contacted. You will tell them what we are and what we did. You will warn them to leave us alone. Keth Zahn stared at her. You want us to advertise your existence to the entire galaxy? Yes, Okonkwo said. Because the next species that comes to our world with hostile intentions should know what they are facing. They should know that we do not surrender. They should know that we have weapons pointed at ourselves and have had them there for a century. They should know that we are patient, that we are creative, and that we are completely willing to die as long as we take our enemies with us. She leaned forward. Her eyes were steady and dark. We want the galaxy to fear us. We want every empire, every collective, every warlike species to hear our name and decide that we are not worth the trouble. We want to be left alone, and we will do whatever it takes to make that happen. The Treaty of Ceres was signed 1 hour later. The Dominion agreed to every demand. They had no choice. The ghost ship was still 8 months from their homeworld, and Okonkwo made it clear that only human commands could stop it. The withdrawal took 3 weeks. Dominion ships left Earth orbit one by one. Ground forces were pulled from the cities they had invaded. Soldiers marched back to their drop ships in silence, watched by human crowds who did not cheer, who did not celebrate, who simply stared with cold eyes. When the last Dominion ship left the solar system, humanity finally allowed itself to breathe. But the victory was bitter. The cost had been enormous. 14 million dead in Sao Paulo, millions more in the ground fighting across 3 continents, cities in ruins, families destroyed. The scars would take generations to heal. General Okonkwo resigned her position 1 month after the treaty was signed. She gave no interviews. She wrote no memoirs. She simply disappeared into private life. A tired old woman who had carried the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. But the work continued without her. The Dominion kept their promise. They sent a message to every spacefaring civilization in their database. The message was simple and clear. The species called humanity is not to be contacted. They are not to be threatened. They are not to be approached under any circumstances. They are located in a system around a yellow star at the following coordinates. Avoid this region of space. Do not send ships. Do not send probes. Do not attempt communication. They are not rational by any standard we understand. They do not surrender. They do not calculate odds of survival. They do not act in their own best interests. When faced with overwhelming force, they choose destruction over submission. They have had weapons capable of ending their own world for over a century, and they kept those weapons ready to use at any moment. They are patient, creative, and completely insane by any reasonable definition. They put a weapon on a path to our homeworld 20 years before we even knew they existed. They did this not because they knew we were coming, but because they could not stop themselves from preparing for threats that might never arrive. This is what they are. This is how they think. Leave them alone. The cost of engaging them is too high. They will fight until nothing remains, and they will consider that a victory. The message spread across the galaxies. Thousands of species received it. Most believed it was exaggerated. They looked at the data and saw a primitive world with primitive technology. How dangerous could such creatures really be? But a few understood. A few had their own histories of violence and survival. They looked at humanity and recognized something familiar, something dangerous, something that should be left alone. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Cities were rebuilt. Families mourned and then moved forward. Children grew up hearing stories about the war, about the warning transmission, about the day humanity stood together against the stars. The ghost ship was recalled. It turned around and began its long journey home, but it was never dismantled. It floated in space, waiting, maintained by automated systems, ready to be reactivated at any moment, just in case. In the deep space monitoring stations, young technicians watched the stars. They listened for signals. They tracked objects moving in the darkness, and they smiled. Sometimes, when they looked at the readings, the universe knew about them now. The universe knew what they were, and for the first time in human history, that was not a weakness. It was a shield. Somewhere in the endless black between stars, the ghost ship drifted onward. Its engines were cold. Its weapons were dormant. Its computers hummed quietly, waiting for commands that might never come. But the coordinates of the Dominion homeworld were still stored in its memory, and humanity never forgot what it was capable of. Not ever.